Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. We are the BEC Filipino 4C Group 3. Before we start our presentation, may I call on Ms. Tricia Joy Arguna to lead the prayer. Ma'am?
Ayan, before we start, let's ask the presence of the Lord. Let's bow down our heads and let's pray. Yes, Lord God, Panginoon, sa hapon ito, Panginoon, pinupuri ka namin sinasamba. And Lord God, um, we ask, Panginoon, na that your presence, O God, guide us, O Jesus, sa aming gagawin. At ikaw po, Panginoon, ang nagbigay ng kalakasan sa amin nang sa gayon ay matapos po namin itong activity namin, Panginoon. At dalangin po namin maisa katuparan ng mga bagay-bagay, O God, na ayon, Panginoon, sa iyong mga kagustuhan, O Lord God. Maraming maraming salamat din po. At muli, Panginoon, sasamahan muli kami, Panginoon, sa bagay na ito. And we declare, O God, na um, ang kagandahan at kaayusan, O Lord God, ng atmosphere, Panginoon, um, and peaceful surrounding, O God. Maraming maraming salamat, Panginoon. Ito po ang sabi dalangin sa pangalan ni Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Let me introduce to you my members, my group mates rather. Ayan. First, Ms. Arguna Tricia Joy. Next is Mr. Marvin Cruz Bulatao. We have Mr. John Meltrick Scarpio. Next is Mr. Christian Lloyd de Vera, Miss Leticia de Vera, Miss Lara May de Guzman, Miss Lina de Vera, Miss Davlin Garcia, Mr. Jericho Garcia, Miss Juvianne Garcia, and Mr. Werlito Padera. Of course, we have Mr. Alvin Poserio, Miss Ronaldine Sanchez, and yours truly, Miss Jermia Laza Sebastian. Yes, sir. Next slide po. Activity 5 is all about the assessing learning outcomes and reporting feedbacks. Before we start, allow me to read the intended learning outcomes. At the end of this activity, the field study student must be able to achieve the following intended learning outcomes. First is to determine the alignment of the assessment tools and tasks with the intended learning outcome. Critique traditional and authentic assessment tools and tasks for learning in the context of establishment, guidelines on test, construction, evaluate non-traditional assessment tools, including scoring rubrics. Fourth is to determine the procedure on how grades are computed and reported to parents. And fifth is to compute students' grade based on DepEd's grading policy. To further discuss to you what is this Activity 5 all about, may I call on Ms. Tricia Joy Arguna and Mr. Lloyd De Vera. Next slide, sir.
Ayan, good
Tricia.
afternoon. Am I loud and clear po?
Yes po, ma'am.
So yeah, let me discuss to you our observation report uh, about whom we interview. Hindi, pala, the forms of assessment tools used by the teacher that we have observed. So yan, assessment for learning. Number one, we observed the assignment po. So teacher Mary Jane gives assignment to their students to write a short narrative about her unforgettable experiences, or their unforgettable experiences. And then she also provides questions. Yan. This is what we call the focus questions. Teacher Mary Jane used tukuyin, to try the students' skills to create a paragraph using pictures. And then, as assessment as learning naman, um, we saw written output. So teacher Mary Jane let the students wrote the narrative essay about what they learn and share on the online class. There is also recitation. These tool was used during the discussion. The lesson was about verbs. So they cite examples of verbs and give its tenses. Say for example, the present tense, the past tense, and the future tense, ganon. Yung kunyari, binigay na yung word na actually she's a Filipino teacher po. Teacher Mary Jane is a Filipino teacher, and then um binigay niya yung example doon is yung laba. So yun, inisa-isa niya sa present tense yung ah, naglalaba, nag, naglalaba at maglalaba. Parang ganun yung pinano niya sa mga student niya. Tapos, there are word while the students cite the words on its appropriate sentence. Sabi ko nga, yan. And then, assessment of learning naman is, there is a feedback of students' level of achievement. Teacher Mary Jane asked the students questions and feedbacks regards on the lesson for the day. So, kasi, she asked, mga anak, ano pong natutunan natin, ganun. Ano pong masasabi nyo, mga ganong bagay yung nagpakita ng assessment of learning. So, next is teacher's assessment. Siya as a teacher, she assessed herself. Yan. Teacher recorded specific observation of the individual student behavior po. So, that's all po. So, as we can see, no, they're just, konti lang yung yung mga nasulat namin dyan. Kasi, alam niyo yun, minimal lang kasi yung magagawa ng teacher, di ba? Lang sila. Parang nagkakaroon lang ng mga ganyan ng mas maanong assessment kasi pag face to face, 'di ba? Pagka mga ganito kasi pag online, more on yung assessment lang na sasagawa kunyari yung mga formative assessment ganun. Pag examination na talaga i-send lang nila yung documents. So, yun, pag ganito parang konti lang talaga tapos saglit lang din yung turo. More on teaching. Yung interactions, more on sharings lang din talaga dun sa online class ni Ma'am Mary Jane. So, yun. And then, yun lamang po. And in behalf of Mr. Christian Lloyd po, sorry po, wala po siya ngayon. And I do the honor na lang po para i-present yung aming activity. So, that's it. And may I call on Miss Ronaline Sanchez for the next activity to present it. So, thank you.
For this part, again, may I call on Miss Ronaline Sanchez? Ma'am, andito ka na po ba? Next slide po muna, sir.
Ma'am, okay na po.
Sige, sir. For this part of observation report, may I call on Miss Lara de Guzman and Miss Leticia de Vera. Ma'am.
Yes, good afternoon everyone. Good afternoon, ma'am. For this observation report, let me first read the direction. Complete the table below the listing the intended learning outcomes projected by the teachers and the assessment activity that supports each. So, first is intended learning outcomes objectives. So first, nakapagbibigay kahulugan sa bahagi ng panalitang sinasaad mula sa mga larawang ipapakita ng guro. On assessment activity naman, yun nga, wala tayong traditional dahil this pandemic, more on non-traditional tayo dahil halos lahat ay virtual class na. So in non-traditional, showing pictures to her students and they will determine what action words is present. So yun nga, nagpakita si Teacher Mary Jane ng mga larawan sa kanyang mga mag-aaral upang matukoy kung ano ang ikinikilos sa bawat larawan at saka pagkatapos matukoy ay susubukang bumuo ng mga pangungusap gamit ang mga larawang ito. So, next slide po. For the second naman, nauunawaan ang kahulugan at pagkakaiba ng bawat aspekto ng pandiwa. So, yun nga, wala tayong traditional dahil yun nga, more on virtual class na tayo ngayon. So, sa non-traditional naman is oral recitation to test or encourage the learners to answer randomly questions given by their teachers. So, yun nga, isang ipinaniwalag ni Teacher Mary ang pandiwa. Ang aspektong perpektibo, imperpektibo, kontemplatibo at perpektibong katatapos. Nang sa gayon ay malaman ng mga mag-aaral kung ano nga ba ang kanilang pagkakaiba-iba at ang kanilang mga kahulugan. Saka nagkaroon naman ng pagsasanay. Upang masubok kung talagang natuto sila sa itinuro ng kanilang guro, ay nagkaroon sila ng maikling pagsasanay ukol sa kontemplatibo at perpektibong katatapos. So, yun lamang po. May I call on Miss Leticia de Vera to continue? Thank you.
Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Ipagpapatuloy ko po ang talakayan. Pangatlo po, sir. Pabalik po sa slide po ako. Pangatlong po. Ang pangatlo po ay nakapagpapahayag ang mga mag-aaral ng sariling opinyon at ideya na natutunan patungkol sa aralin. Alam naman po natin na online class po tayo, kaya ang assessment po na ginawa ni ma'am ay non-traditional. Generalization summary. Ma'am Mary Jane asking a question to her student, what they have learned in the topic that she discussed. Naibabahagi ng mga mag-aaral ang kanilang natutunan ukol sa paksang aspekto ng pandiwa sa pamamagitan ng pagtatanong ng guro sa mag-aaral kung ano nga ba ang kanilang natutunan. Nailahad ng mga mag-aaral kung ano nga ba ang kahalagahan at kung paano nga ba nakatutulong ang aspekto ng pandiwa at ang apat na aspekto ng pandiwang aspektong perpektibo, imperpektibo, kontemplatibo at perpektibong katatapos sa kanilang pang-araw-araw nilang pamumuhay at kung kailan naganap ang kilos. Yun lamang po. May I call on Ma'am Davlin Garcia to continue our discussion.
Hello po, may I interrupt lang po saglit. Balikan lang po natin saglit si Ma'am Ronaldine Sanchez. Ayan, sir. Good afternoon, ma'am. Nakamute ka po, ma'am.
Yan, okay po. So, good afternoon po sa ating lahat. Pasensya na po kanina at may importante lang po ginawa. Okay, so, Let's continue the question number 1 and 2. Question number 1, which of the listed assessments are formative in nature? Justify your answer. Okay, so from the listed assessment above, I think that the formative in nature is the assessment for learning, or the AFL, because it has been closely associated with the formative assessment since it practices questioning and providing of feedback. The listed activities create feedback, which is then used to improve students' performance. And regarding to the assessment, we can see that students become more involved in the learning process. And I think they gain confidence in what they are expected to learn and to what standard. Also, it led to students' involvement in becoming more active in their learning and started to think like a teacher based on what I have observed in the virtual class using the listed activities above. Okay, so next, number 2 question, list all the summative assessments that you have observed and why do you say so? So, in collecting evidence of students' knowledge, skills of proficiency, teacher Mary Jane used this type of summative assessment after discussing the topic because it will help her to know if her students really understand the topic and to know whether the technique of her teaching works. Okay, so that's all for the question 1 and 2. Next po. Thank you po.
Next po ay si Miss Devlin Garcia, ma'am. Dito ka na po ba? Hello po. Ma'am Devlin.
Yes, hello po. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So, dumako na po tayo sa question number 1. Ma'am, yung question number 1 ko po is, why is there a need to evaluate learning? Ano po yung nakalagay, ma'am? Yan po. So, why is there a need to evaluate learning? There's a need to evaluate learning is order for the teacher to know whether learning objectives are met. Evaluation also help teacher to determine whether the student understand the topic or meet. It also give motivation to the student to active more in class. So mahalaga po yung evaluate learning po para po malaman po natin kung may natutunan ba talaga ang ating mga estudyante o kung na-meet po talaga natin ang 3 objectives po natin. So yun lamang po. Thank you po.
Good afternoon po.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Next question po sa analyze is question number 2. Do teachers need to record results of formative and summative assessment? Why or why not? So, formative and summative assessments are very essential for teachers to monitor students' learning. So, in terms of the need to record results of this assessment, so, yes po, meron po talagang kailangan po talaga na i-record ng teacher yung result. So that the teacher might have valid and reliable basis for the grades of the student. So aside from having valid and reliable basis, The record of results also allows the teacher to see how well students have grasped the material and immediately adjust their teaching styles and technique. So, yun nga, yung formative and summative, talaga pong nire-record po yan ng teacher. Sa summative, iba kasi yung sa formative at summative. Sa summative, yung sa, ano yon, may binibigay na questions. Tapos, saka ano yan, para maano ng para may maano sila sa parents kung sakaling may kunwari may ano pa ba may ano ba yung mga anak nila kung parang sorry may sorry po, maingay po. Yun nga po, yung formative and summative, kailangan po talagang record ng teacher para may basis po sila sa mga nakukuha ng mga estudyante. Yun po. Thank you po. Ang susunod po ay si Ma'am Jovi.
Hello po. Good afternoon. Naririnig po ba ako, Ma'am Sir?
Yes po, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Let's proceed number 3. The assessment that was administered, do you think the teacher prepared a table specification? Elucidate your answer. So based on the video that I've watched, the teacher assessed her students in which they would reflect on how the verb aspect would help in discussing the events and what they had learned today. And for me, I think the teacher prepared a table of specification. The teacher assessed her student and answer by clarifying and giving more examples so that they could better understand what they were discussing. Next question. How did the assessment tools with the learning outcomes until it to do with it? And each student will answer what the teacher. So second one, while the teacher is discussing, she gives practice or test to her student so that she knows if her student is anything regarding their lesson. And the last learning outcomes after the discussion, each of how they can apply a situation about what they have learned. So that's all. May I call on Mr. Warlito Padera? Next question po. Thank you.
Hello po, good afternoon. This question number 5, did the teacher use scoring rubrics to evaluate the student performance? Describe how it was utilized. Yes, because a rubric is intended to give a characterization of the quality of student work and emphasize explicit description of what a student will do. She can give the guidelines by using rubrics. She able to communicate with students what their expectations are and how they will be graded. Yun lamang po. Next po, John Meltrix.
So, good afternoon po ma'am. Good afternoon po sa ating lahat. So, for question number 6 po, did the learners encounter difficulty in answering the teacher's questions? Why or why not? Expound your answer. So, for me here, students or the learners didn't encounter any difficulties in answering the teacher's question because the teacher is very collaborative and lively, and the learners are very cooperative. So from the start until the demo ends, the learners never get bored because the teachers gave different strategies for his students. So yun lamang po. So next presenter.
Hello sir, pabalik po dun sa unang slides po.
Sa number 7 pa po yata, ma'am.
Ay,
Bago
okay
yung
sir.
reflection.
Ikaw po pala bago yung reflection. Sorry po.
Yes po, ma'am. Sige po. Okay, for the number 7, did the teacher encounter challenges during the computation and reporting of grades to parents? If yes, what are these? Okay, for education is very important, especially during this time of pandemic. Teachers nowadays face a lot of struggles, sacrifices, and effort. What of those challenging tasks that a teacher may encounter is first is the computation and reporting of grades to parents on this new normal. Okay, the teacher may give a grade to the learner in its highest peak, but the teacher may ask himself, does these students really deserve these grades? Ayan din po yung mga madalas na tinatanong nila sa kanilang sarili, or did he or she make effort to reach that mark, and is he or she the one answering the question? Ayan po, kasi hindi naman po nila alam kung sino po talaga yung sumasagot ng mga binibigay po nilang task, kasi nga po modular na po nga yung ginagamit po nila, or online class. Ayan. Or what the number one source of a learner in finding answers. Ayan. It is from encyclopedia, book, internet, or a close friends. Those are some queries that a teacher may doubt in computing the grades of learners. Ayan po. Ayan po yung mga na-encounter po ng mga teachers ngayon. And for the reporting of grades, the parents is also essential. The pandemic, parents are only allowed to enter school premises if their ages are 59 below. Ayan. They are not pregnant, and the COVID-19 symptoms are not present. Okay. They should also follow standard of IATF protocols before the releasing of the report card of their child. Ayan. For teachers also prepare hand washing facility, classroom disinfection, monitoring of temperature and signages to avoid the risk of having COVID-19. The learner may only allow to enter the institution and their age is 12 years old and above. They follow standard health protocol, and the learner is not pregnant, and the COVID-19 symptoms is not present to them. Ayan po yung mga na-encounter po nilang challenges ngayong mga teachers. That's all. Thank you po. Next, we have this for the interview to be presented by Miss Jeremiah Sebastian. Ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Am I loud and clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me read first the direction. Interview a teacher from the DepEd and or the PSULIS. Ask how they compute learners' grades and what criteria do they consider. Also ask how are the grades or performance reported to parents. Record the results of your interview here. By the way, Miss Lala B.D. Guzman, a teacher 1 from a junior high school, a Filipino teacher, from Dasmariñas Integrated High School. According to her, she stated that the use of the K-12 grading system, learners from grades 1 to 12 are graded on written work, performance tasks, and quarterly assessment every quarter. These three are given specific percentage weights that vary according to the nature of the learning area. In a grading period, there is one quarterly assessment, but there should be instances for students to produce written work and to demonstrate what they know and what they can do through performance tasks. There is no required number of written work and performance tasks, but this must be spread out over the quarter and used to assist learners' skills after each unit has been taught. Through the conduct of Parents-Teacher Conference or PTC meeting, the teachers reported students' progress report orally to the parents and give feedback about their child progress. When the pandemic came, it's not applicable to do it face-to-face. That is why we use online communication to connect with the parents or guardians. We do phone call, chat in Facebook Messenger, and even sending emails. Based on the observation or the interview we've done, the way of Miss Lala de Guzman parents to report the grades of her students is natural na nararanasan natin ngayon base dun sa mga alimbawa na lang dun sa mga kapatid natin na junior high school or high school. Siyempre, nung naging face-to-face na, limited lang yung pagpunta sa school. Base nga din po dun sa sinabi ni Mr. Marvin Cruz Bulataw, kasi nga mayroon din tayong mga sinusundang mga rules. Tulad na lang ng IATF protocols. Yes. Tapos, dun sa mga, syempre, dun sa pagbibigay ng module, bawat pagbibigay ng module ng teacher sa mga parents, sinasabi nila yung mga progress or pagbabago, development dun sa anak nila. And that's all. Next naman po, proceed na po tayo sa reflection. Yeah, for the reflection part, of course, after we observe, we analyze, and then we reflect. First question is, as a millennial would-be teacher, how can the assessment process help you make learning more fun and more meaningful? For me, as a millennial would-be a teacher, it would be fun to assess students using technology to make all the diverse learners participative and become active to discussion. I will make a lesson plan that will meet the need of curriculum and the multiple intelligences that the student possess by using PowerPoint slides and creative activities or tasks that will motivate every student to boost up their confidence. Of course, it is very important to engage a technology in this today's education learning process, because everywhere in every aspect of our doings nowadays, we are using technology. We are now in technology world. And of course, lesson plan. It is very important to make a lesson plan that will meet the need of curriculum. And of course, we as a millennial becoming teacher, it is very important for you to integrate a creative activities that will catch up your students' attention, and it will help you to build a meaningful learning. Next po. Next question is, as a future teacher, how can you eliminate fear of assessment to your students given this new normal mode of teaching? Of course, as a future educator, my responsibility is to educate my students, enlighten their minds to the lesson, and motivate them to their part by studying and be prepared before taking their assessment. Recitation is also a way for the students to remember all the ideas they have learned from the discussion. And also, as a future educator, our innovative way of teaching will help our students to pass any assessment that they need to take by ensuring that we teach them effectively and absorb what they need to learn. Of course, it is very important if we discuss the importance and what is this assessment we need to give to our students for them to be able to adjust and think on how to attack or how to absorb that kind of assessment. And it is stated there also that recitation is also a way for the students to remember all the ideas. Of course, in recitation part, you are able to identify if your students catch up or absorb what you taught to them. And also, your innovative way. It is very important to integrate an innovative way of teaching. For example, giving them a new task to them. For example, giving them a motivational activities. Of course, in that way, it will eliminate their fear for the assessments. Next question naman po ay kay Mr. Alvin Poserio. Mr. Alvin, are you here? Okay, next question, sir. Okay, question number 3. If you are a teacher, how do you formulate a plan for your assessment tools in an online platform teaching? According to Mr. Alvin Posario, here is his answer. As a teacher, the solution that I can offer to address the challenges in evaluating my students' performance is by creating a standard. This standard will be my assessment toolbox wherein I can review and reflect to evaluate my students' performance. I will create rubrics that I can use as a set of scoring to determine the challenges in giving proper grades to my students. I will also be specific in giving feedback to my students, not just saying good job without them knowing what I really like on their performance. Of course, it is very important to give that feedback. Every one of us needs feedback on what we are doing for us to be able to assess if we did a good job or a good job or not a well job done or not a job well done. And also, Mr. Alvin Pusario stated that he will create an assessment toolbox wherein he can use to review and to reflect his students' performance. It is very important to reflect and to evaluate, also to analyze the students' performance for you to be able to para malaman mo kung paano or kung ano yung nararapat na feedback na maibibigay mo sa mga estudyante mo. Next po. Next slide, sir. Yan. Attach a sample computation of grades using the DepEd assessment guidelines. Ito po yung example ng grading system from DepEd. Math and Science grade 1 to 10. Written works, meron po diyang 50%. Performance tasks, 50%. Of course, the initial grade and the quarterly grade. Dito po sa possible high score is first quarter is 20, second is 25, third 20, fourth is 20. Total of 85. And the possible score is 100. Weighted average is 50%. Learner Si Juan de la Cruz, halimbawa, ang nakuha niya dun sa unang quarter is 18 out of 20. Sa second naman is 22 out of 25. Sa third naman ay 20 out of 20. And then fourth is 17 out of 20. Nakakuha siya ng 77. Possible score is 91. Mayroong siyang weighted average na 45.5. Sa next naman po is sa performance task. Meron siyang weighted average of 37.5. Kaya yung initial grade niya is 83. Kaya yung naging quartile grade niya po ay 89. Pinag-add lang po yung sa written works, tapos performance task, yung 45.5, tapos yung 37.5, kaya nakuha po yung 83. Yun na po yung isa initial grade niya. Gumamit din po sila dito ng transmutation table. Based from the department order, number 8, series of 2015. Yung 83% po ay may 82.40 to 83.99 ay may equivalent grade na 89. Kaya po nakuha yung 89. Yan, okay na po ba? In-indicate din po namin dito yung link na pinagkuhanan namin ng grading system. Yan, of course, the evidences. We are during answering this activity. Next slide, sir. Of course, the teamwork. We can do all things impossible, possibly, if we have a unity. For the conclusion of this activity, may I call on Mr. Jericho Garcia. Sir?
Good afternoon to everyone. So next we have here our conclusion for activity number 5. Activity number 5 is all about assessing learning outcomes and reporting feedbacks. Naririnig na po ba ako?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
And activity number 5 is all about assessing learning outcomes and reporting feedbacks are focused on domain number 5. And to determine the alignment of the assessment tools and the task with the intended learning outcomes, important to ensure that there is alignment between teaching methods, learning outcomes, and assessing criteria. Clear expectations on the part of students of what is required of them are a vitally important part of the students' effective learning. This correlation between teaching learning outcomes and assessing helps to make the overall learning experience more transparent and meaningful for students. Primary purposes of student assessment are to determine what students know and are capable of doing to help students advance in their learning and to assist students in making an informed decision on the next step in their education. Focus on what will be the impact of performance of the students about the lesson and how to assess and what assessment tools the teacher will use to make her teaching effective in our observation. Teacher Mary Jane aligned her tasks in assessment tools by showing pictures and telling what to do with it. And each of the discussions, she had a task or questions prepared for her students so that she knows if they are following or learning their subject matter. Effective feedback is designed to determine a learner's level of understanding and skill development in order to plan the next step toward achieving the learning intentions or goals. Feedback is a compelling influence on learner achievement when teachers seek or at least are open to what learners know, what they understand, where they make errors, when they have misconceptions, when they are not engaged, then teaching and learning can be synchronized and powerful. Yan, naririnig po ba ako? Maya mo yung boses ko.
Yes, sir.
So, continue. Feedback to teachers makes learning visible. Feedback is a key element of the incremental process, a process of ongoing learning and assessment. Providing frequent and ongoing feedback is a significant means of improving achievement in learning. It involves the provision of information about aspects of understanding and performance and can be given by practitioners, peers, oneself, and from learners to practitioners. Effective feedback assists the learner to reflect their learning and their learning strategies so they can make adjustments to make better progress in their learning. We can say that the teacher is good because we can see or we have seen in her discussion that her students keep up learning and are able to give their own ideas and they are active in all activities they do. And the teacher really achieved her goal of every student learning about their lesson. That's all. Thank you everyone for listening.